Time to light it up. What is... Kill me now.
So we're both here for Merry Maniacs and December, and it's Christmas, and here we are for Christmas, and we're doing a unconventional Christmas movie, I guess.
So my question is, are you wearing your hat?
I am wearing my hat.
Alright, just checking. I think my hat's on. That's alright.
It's kind of funky looking, but it...
Alright, so, you know, I think there's two great Christmas movies out there. Two of the greatest Christmas movies ever. And the one we're not reviewing, but this one we are reviewing. And this is...
Steven Spielberg presents Gremlins.
Now, Gremlins is one of my all-time favorite movies ever.
Yeah, it's one of my all-time favorite movies as well. I absolutely love this movie. I loved it from the moment I saw it. From the moment I saw the poster for it.
And the thing, too, with this movie is, Vince, a lot of people, probably in their, teens or the 20s, don't even know what Gremlins is, and that's so sad because they have not remade it, and they don't really promote it that much, and they don't really talk about it that much. So you don't really hear about Gremlins that much because there hasn't been 65 sequels and 10 remakes of this movie.
One of the things about this movie was the merchandising of it and the promoting of it.
Merchandising? What's that? Merchandising? Come, I'll show you.
It's fun to care for Gizmo, imagine he's your pet. It's fun to care for Gizmo and never getting wet. Never can make sure to keep him out of the light and never feed him after midnight. Yes, never.
I mean, there's been Gremlins toys out there, but it's hard to find them. Some of them. I mean, some of them are really hard to find.
Merchandising, where the real money from the movie is made.
Hungry as a gremlin? Here's gremlin cereal.
Gremlins, bite after bite. What a tasty way to satisfy a gremlin appetite. Gremlin, yum yum.
I remember when I saw the poster for this film, I was like really intrigued.
Gizmo.
Yeah, just that poster alone right there gave you a sense of, wow, what could this be? What is this, Not knowing anything about it. I never knew not one thing about this movie ever going into it when we first saw it.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I told my wife when we were watching it. I said, when this movie came out, they didn't show what the Gremlins look like. You had no idea. There was no internet.
Freaking internet rumors and plot leaks and things like that. This was a complete surprise when it came out.
There was nothing, and until you actually went to go see the movie, they kept it as a surprise. You had no idea what Gizmo looked like. You had no idea what the other Gremlins. You didn't even know there was other Gremlins. I mean, that's what was so great about, in the 80s anyway, because you didn't know anything about the movie when you went to go see it. It was all a big surprise.
You had no idea, because there's nothing ahead of it until after it came out.
And the other really weird thing about this film is it came out in the middle of the summer, or the beginning of the summer. It came out... It's one of those movies that I have a very distinct memory of going to see it. I went to go see it. For whatever reason, I went to go see it with my mom and my sister, and it was really hot that day. I remember going to see it, and it was just so hot that day, and I, again, didn't even know this was a Christmas movie until we sat down until the movie started, and I'm like, this is a Christmas movie. And by the time we came out of the movie theater, we were all refreshed and cool and cold because there was a movie because it was a Christmas movie. And it was cool. It was like they never really did that. They don't even do it. I mean, how many Christmas movie comes out during summer?
Yeah, and see, you went in and sat down and thought, wow, it's a Christmas film. For some reason, that didn't even occur to me. When I sat and watched it, I was like, oh, I think I might have said, oh wow, it's during Christmas, really? Something like that, and that's about it. It's like even after I came out of the theater, I didn't even think of it as being necessarily a Christmas movie because it's a monster movie. I think the monster part of it actually took over more than the Christmas part of it. It wasn't until later, until I watched it again or saw it again, that I thought, wow, this takes place all during Christmas, and it's more of a Christmas movie than it is a monster movie.
And again, this was before PG-13 and all that. Or was this? It wasn't PG-13 because it came out when Temple of Doom came out, and that was one of the first, or that was the movie that made the PG-13 rating, I believe.
Yeah, it was this movie and Temple of Doom that caused the whole PG-13 thing.
Gross. It really does. It gets really freaking violent and gross in this movie.
When Temple of Doom came out and Gremlins came out, they were both PG, and kids were going to see these films with their parents. And because it was Steven Spielberg, and E.T. had come out, so everybody's thinking, all right, it's Steven Spielberg, it's going to be something like E.T., and how heartwarming and the whole thing with E.T. So it couldn't be that bad, right? So they go out and see Gremlins, and here's these little creatures that are gross and disgusting, and they're doing all these violent things, and then they see Temple of Doom where they're ripping out hearts. So so they had to make a new rating system, and that's where PG-13 was born.
And I just want to talk about the movie here a little bit. I think, there's movies out there that I call a perfect film. And I think Gremlins absolutely is in that category of a perfect movie. Just like the original Raiders of the Lost Ark. Just like Back to the Future 1. This is that. This is a perfect film. Perfect from the beginning to the middle to the end. It doesn't slow down. The story is moving constantly. It's stuff you've never seen before. It's fun. It's action-packed. It's scary. It's bloody. It's violent. And it takes place on Christmas. So it's just a perfect movie. It's an absolute perfect film.
Yeah, when you look at it that way, it is.
It is. I absolutely have always considered Gremlins a perfect movie. Just like I said, like Back to the Future and and Raiders. It's just a perfect film. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this.
Yeah, I agree with you. But what I'm talking about is when you actually do stop and look at the film, there are a couple little things here and there that you sit there and go, okay, wait a second, because one thing is the rules. There's the rules, and one of the big rules is never get them wet. But yet, the Gremlins come out into the snow.
I warned you, Brad.
That's what my wife pointed out too. Is I thought maybe because it was a different type of moisture rather than just rain or just coming down water on them, that maybe it was something different. I don't know.
My son actually caught that the first time he watched it. He goes, and after we got done watching it, he actually said that to me. Brandon said that to me, was one thing I didn't understand, Dad, was if you couldn't get them wet, and here they show Stripe jump into the pool, they were all out in the snow like the whole time. They're running down the street and it's snowing, and or they're popping up while the carolers are singing. They're popping up through the snow.
Maybe because it was a different type of moisture. Maybe it has to be actual water rather than frozen water that defrosts. Who knows? I mean, they're Gremlins, Vince.
They also pointed out when the dad, Hoyt Axton, is talking to Billy, and he says,
Number 2, keep him away from water. Don't give him any water to drink. And whatever you do, don't give him a bath.
Don't give him anything to drink. And then they have the whole scene in the bar where they're drinking.
Again, that's alcohol, so it could be different than water. So
I'm just saying, it's like they seem to get a whole lot of water on them where they don't multiply, but then they show them, jump into a pool or whatever, or get drips on them, and they pop up everywhere.
And this, again, is a perfect 80s film, and obviously Joe Dante directed this, wasn't Steven Spielberg, but it really does feel like a Steven Spielberg movie, just like Poltergeist, or not Poltergeist, what was that movie? Yeah, like Poltergeist. He didn't direct that. That was Tobe Hooper. We did that whole thing already.
Yeah. Or did he direct it?
Like a Steven Spielberg movie. And once again, like Poltergeist did. Like he should have directed this film. And I really like the dad in here. I don't know who that actor was, but he was so good in this movie.
That was Hoyt Axton.
And what else has he been in?
He was a country singer.
It was Della and a dealer and a dog named Jake and a cat named Kalamazoo. Left the city in a pickup truck, gonna make some dreams come true.
Oh. Well, see, that's why I wouldn't know it.
Well, I think he's been in a couple other films, or TV shows or something, but he was primarily a country singer.
One of my favorite parts of the movie is when he's in a phone booth and he's calling home, and Robbie the Robot's walking past him, and you got Steven Spielberg, he's riding past him on a bicycle or something. And in the background, you have the time machine. Is it H.G. Wells' Time Machine that the guy's on? And then the next shot, the time machine's gone, and they're like, "Oh, where did it go?" It's just stuff like that. Oh my God, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it was all homages to all these other films.
Yeah, it's just all that stuff is so great. And again, when we saw this for the first time, going back to that again, is when they showed Gizmo for the very first time popping out of that box. You're like, oh, wow, what is this? Is it going to be gross? Is it going to be cool? And then you realize, oh, it's just a fluffy little animal. And again, back in the 80s, you never, at least to me, it never occurred to me that this was a puppet. You just assumed that it was a real thing, and just like E.T., when you went to see E.T., you didn't think, oh, hey, this is a mechanical puppet, or whatever. Because you know why, Vince?
Because it was practical effects, and it was real.
Exactly. It's something that they picked up, and they could feel, and you could see it was furry, and, his face expressions, and he could grip things, and he could, it was a real thing. And when you watch that, you're thinking, oh, hey, it's a gremlin. It's a real thing. You never, I mean, now, obviously, you're like, oh, hey, that's a really cool puppet. But back then, you're like, oh, hey, that's awesome. Where can I get a gremlin,
Yeah, I kind of thought that too. I was like, man, I would really love to have a Mogwai. Let's see, 84, I would have been 13 years old. So seeing that, that's what I thought. I was like, man, could these things actually be a real thing? I had no idea, but the way they showed them in the movie, they look real. They look like a real thing that you could go and actually pick up and buy and have a Mogwai for yourself. And I always wanted that.
It's fun to care for Gizmo, imagine he's your pet. It's fun to care for Gizmo and never getting wet.
And the other couple scenes in this movie that I think are some of the greatest scenes in movie history is when the woman, she gets in her chair and then they short-circuit her chair and she goes flying up the stairs and flies out. I still think it's one of the greatest scenes I've ever seen in movie history. Oh my God, it just kills me.
One of the scenes I remember the most from it too is the Mr. Futterman scene with Dick Miller, when the Gremlins actually take his snowplow through his house, and I remember seeing that in the trailers on television. I never actually saw the actual theatrical trailer for this, but the TV spots, I remember seeing that on the TV spots everywhere, of the Gremlins crashing through his house, and then him going, "There's a gremlin in my cab!"
There's a real gremlin in my cab!
And let's not forget the Santa Claus story. I mean...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was devastating when you see... She tells that story about the Santa Claus and her dad. Oh my God, I can't believe that was even in the movie. I mean, as dark as the film was, that really brought it down. I mean, that really took it down to real darkness right there.
And that was the thing about this movie. It had this underlining dark humor to it. And that's why a lot of people found it more funny than it was horrifying in a lot of places. It was more of a funny monster movie because of that, because it had all this dark humor in it.
And obviously they used some stop motion here. Not a whole lot, really. Just when they were started walking down the street for the first time, that was, stop motion. And the one scene that I thought was the creepiest, probably out of the whole movie, was the one, there was an animated sequence where they were behind the screen of the movie theater, and you see all the gremlins coming up, behind the screen. It's all animated. It was just real creepy. I always thought that was one of the creepiest scenes in the movie.
Yeah, it was. I have a lot of favorite little parts in here, and that's one of them.
So, as you can see, we are not going to be doing we might do one or two conventional Christmas movies this year. But, this is, for our Maniac fans out there, and for those who may never have seen Gremlins, who may have heard of it and never watched it. It's like I said, it's one of the greatest films of all time. It's seriously one of my all-time favorite. It's probably my top 6, my top 7, maybe my top 5 favorite films of all time. Is this one right here?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite all-time. Well, it is one of my favorite all-time Christmas films too. and that's the thing. Like I said, I never really thought of it as a Christmas film when I first saw it. I just thought of it as a cool monster movie. But then later on, watching it as I grew up and everything, watching it later on, I was like, wow, this is a really cool Christmas film. I never really thought of it that way, but yeah, it's a Christmas film. I mean, from beginning to end, and it's one of my favorites, and I love it.
So I'm going to have to give Gremlins, surprisingly, I know it's going to shock everybody, but I'm going to give it
the bomb.
You know what? I definitely would also give it.
Yep, it is. It's a spectacular movie to watch in December because it is Christmas too. It is a Christmas movie. There's a lot of Christmas going on in this movie. There's snow and there's Christmas songs and Christmas stuff, and there's a lot of. They don't ignore Christmas in the movie, is what I'm saying. It's very Christmassy.
And one last thing that I'll mention too is it's got so many different stars in it. I mean, there's not only Hoyt Axton, but there's also Corey Feldman is in this.
I was like, I can't believe he's in here. I totally forgot he was in that movie.
Yeah, and this is after he did Friday the 13th, and during when he was working on. I think it was after this that he did Goonies. Plus, there's Judge Reinhold in it from Beverly Hills Cop. There's Phoebe Cates. There's Polly Holliday, who plays Mrs. Deagle. I mean, even I don't remember his name, but the one deputy he was also in Beverly Hills Cop. It's one of the bad guys.
And he's also in a little show called Breaking Bad.
And even at that point, they weren't really huge stars, but it wasn't long after this that all these people became big stars.
And rightfully so. I mean, this is a movie. This is a movie that catapulted everybody's careers. And it's also, like I said, it's kind of a film that people know, but people don't talk about anymore because they don't. I'm sure there is a sequel coming up or a remake, and I know they've been talking about it for years and years and years of doing one, but it ain't out yet. So let me talk a little bit about the DVD quality, because I have it on Blu-ray, and the quality is horrible. I gotta say, it's an awful looking Blu-ray. I thought it, even upgraded to 4K that we have, it looked terrible. It's just the brights, when things become bright, it just washes everything out. It's like it's all pixelated. It's terrible looking. It's absolutely horrible looking. I thought the quality of the picture was awful.
I would totally agree with that. I mean, the picture for this film could have been so much better. They could have worked on it so much better. It's almost like they just didn't care. They were just, well, let's just throw it on a Blu-ray, even though it was like a 25th anniversary edition or 20th anniversary edition or something like that when they made it. And it's just like they just, well, let's just get it out there.
One last thing I want to say here is it has one of my favorite soundtracks of all time. I absolutely love the soundtrack.
Wing it, Dave.
I love it. Love the music.
The Gremlin Rag.
Love it.
That's what it's called. The Gremlin Rag. I absolutely love that theme too. That's like one of my all-time favorite movie themes.
Gizmo.